And I wanted to draw some conclusions around what drove successful outcomes for hardware console units in the past. And I think what I came up with was three things, and I'd love to hear your views on it. The first one is speed to market in the specific generation. The second one is differentiated features and innovations specific to that console. And then the third one is software lineup. And this is in no specific order, but love to hear if you guys have any different views.
Yeah, I think in particular, the importance of exclusive content, I think, at least for me, kind of defined the initial success of those platforms. And it might be interesting to think about how much of an impact you guys think that has today. But at least for me, that's how I made my early console decisions is, where am I going to be able to play a specific game?
I definitely think that first party content is it's the only factor that has spanned all of the most recent generations. Like if we look at technology and differentiated factors, like that was huge for Xbox in the beginning. And Brian, you've laid out some of the numbers we're going to get into, but they were the first one to have online multiplayer in a console, right? That was huge. Halo 2 was the first ever online multiplayer game. Like that was a huge selling point for Xbox at the
Mhm.
time. Then they tried the Kinect and that was just a huge flop. So that's been hit or miss. Nintendo hit or miss, right? They seem to TikTok between generations. The Wii was a massive success with how they structured the controller with the motion sensors, but the Wii U was a massive flop with that weird tablet thing. But then the Switch was amazingly successful. So they do seem to that seems to be hit and miss depending on the time. But I think it also ties back to the software. What software takes advantage of those technologies? And I think that's why I think the first party content or even second party content, when you look at Sony more recently, is more of the thing that has the most staying power across generations. I've also heard people talk about distribution. Like someone was making the point that Sony has better distribution into Africa and other parts of Asia. It's like, yes, that's true, but how many PS5s are being sold in sub-Saharan Africa? Like consoles are mostly a Japan, Western Europe, and North American market, maybe a little bit of South America, maybe a little bit of Northern Africa, but like majority of the market is Japan, Western Europe, North America. So like Microsoft has distribution in two of those three very well. They've always been outsold by Sony in Japan just because Sony has that local market. But I think distribution also is one that on the margin, it makes a difference, but it's not the key driver.
Yeah, there's a famous quote from, well, not a famous quote, there's kind of a niche quote from this guy, Roger McNamee, who's a famous investor, but he once said that between the content and the audience, everything in between is a choice. And so from that perspective, why did I buy an Xbox? I want to play Halo. Why did I get Nintendo? Because of Pokemon. Why did I get PlayStation? Because of Final Fantasy. So yeah, definitely probably still relevant today. Yeah, I think maybe one other thing I could jump in here with is there's in this generation, I think there is a little bit of a different environment in the sense that it's no longer PlayStation versus Switch versus Xbox. I think it's PlayStation versus Switch versus PC, right? Because if you think about historically, PlayStation was always the best platform to play RPG games and narrative based action adventure types of games, right? Switch with Nintendo platforms, you always want, that's the place you go to for Pokemon and those kind of IP titles. And for an FPS, it used to be Halo and Xbox, but now my kids, instead of for us, we didn't get the latest Xbox. Instead, they both got PCs and they're playing Valorant all day long. So I do think we are probably at an inflection point for when players think about FPS, they're not going to be thinking Xbox. They're going to be thinking PC. And I think increasingly more people are going to just get a PC instead of getting an Xbox.